But it doesn't matter because we go right back into a flashback again, and it's the part where June is moving her shit into Luke's place. And I guess that conversation that she had with Moira got under her skin a bit because she started asking Luke about, his past with his wife, specifically the vows and what kind of wedding they had, and the fact that it was a church wedding. I I don't understand this line of questioning. I mean, is it just a like those just seem like questions I really don't think I would care about those questions. Because I guess if they're planning on getting married, would you not kind of talk to the person that you are going to be marrying? What kind of wedding would you like to have? Kind of thing? Like, what is your history with that whole like spirituality shit that surrounds weddings?
I
I don't
was
know. I
more
just thought the questioning was
surprised.
odd.
Yeah, I just thought it was odd that they hadn't had that conversation yet.
Yeah.
Because it seems like this is almost, to the line of they got to be getting married close, is the impression I get at least. And they're
Mm.
at least moving in together and they're talking about getting married. So I don't know. I felt like this wedding was impending very soon. And I just felt like it was weird that it took Moira's questioning and getting under June's skin for her to have this conversation with Luke. I'm like, you guys haven't talked about this yet? You're moving in
Mm.
together and the wedding is planned and you've decided you're keeping your own name, but you haven't decided to ask him what his first wedding was like and what he wants with this one?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that I'm still on team. I'm surprised that they just didn't hash the stuff out before. I mean, I feel like I would want to know these things, but I guess June didn't want to know them. And that's totally okay. But I do feel like maybe this is where Moira comes in because Moira feels like it's her job to know them and to know whether, like, what June is getting into, because she has this natural propensity to look out for June.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the two of them hashed out like how they imagined their wedding being, but I can see it being a bit pervasive, asking someone else like, "Hey, I know you were married before. What was that wedding like compared to like what we're planning? Tell me everything." I can just see that being a very awkward conversation and perhaps information that she just didn't feel was necessary to be privy to. And also the sort of stuff that he's not going to, who would volunteer that? Like when they're discussing the details with their current fiance, like, "Oh, well, the last time I got married, it was in a church." And like, you know, I don't know. It didn't strike me as bizarre that hadn't been discussed. Like what the relationship or what his marriage to Annie was like, the actual ceremony.
I can see them not discussing most of the ceremony. Like all of that I'm on board
Yeah.
with. June just wouldn't go there and it doesn't matter to her. And I can see all of that except for if we're operating under the idea that they've at least talked about their own wedding and what their wedding is going to be like, then they've talked about what they're going to do for their vows. And I can see that being a question of, or at least it should have been on June's mind before Moira brought it up, of these are what they're going to be using for their vows, and maybe wonder what Luke's vows were the first time. And then those questions would start to come of, was it in a church? I don't know. It just seemed kind of strange that this was the point that June brought it up, and then he seemed evasive of like, why are you bringing it up? But I'm like, well, you're about to get married. And I don't know. It's just the vows part where I'm like, I feel like that just would have to be a conversation or at least a thought in June's mind at some point.
Ooh, see, I didn't see it as Luke being evasive at all. Like I saw it as him like immediately recognizing that what like that she's prying in a way that she hasn't before, and perhaps prying
Yes.
is a bit too aggressive of a word, but like if the need wasn't if there hadn't had that conversation prior, why is this important now? So that's like I didn't see Luke as trying to be evasive with that. I saw Luke as being like, okay, what fucking happened? Like
I guess I
why
just
why
see
is it
that as
important now?
evasive
Mm-hmm.
because especially the way you use the word prying. I'm like, well, that's it. Like, he sees, to me, I feel like he sees it as, why are you prying now? Which to me screams evasive. But I see what you're saying of, it's also him picking up on the fact that something has changed in her mind. And
Yes.
what is this? How have we gotten to this point right here where you're deciding is the time as we're moving boxes to bring this up?
Yes, thank you for articulating what I was thinking.
I guess bottom line, if we're perceiving it as an odd line of questioning, Luke sure as hell perceived it as an odd line of
True.
questioning.
Right.
True.
Because that's why he was instantly like, what's going on, you know? And, you know, June expresses her concerns, and it kind of manifests in her being annoyed at his handling of her cocktail picture that she stole. And I love that, because I also used to have one of those. Who doesn't? And then her question, what if I can't get pregnant? And he says that, well, you're not Annie, and I'm a different person than I was back then. Again, that's I feel like I would love a little more into whatever is there with that whole situation. I really feel like that. I feel like there are just little things that tell me that it was a big fucking deal that his first wife couldn't have kids. It's weird. Like, you're not Annie. Okay, yeah, we know that she's not Annie, but I'm a different person than I was back then. So that's why I'm just like, so what went on there, you know? And is that why June had so many reservations about coming back and saying, hey, sorry, I don't have our kid? I lost
Yeah.
her.
No,
My
absolutely.
bad. That's why I
Yeah.
always wondered if there was more to that.
Mhm.
But then she's just so worried. She's like, what if I end up disappointing you? And I don't know. Do people really ask these questions of each other? I
Yes.
feel like my husband and I don't have these kinds of conversations. Not like this. I don't know. We're, I think that we're less meandering about our questions than these two, I think. I think that's what it is. And maybe that's what like 20 plus years of companionship will get you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just like, wow, this new relationship shit is so strange to me.
That's probably what it is. Yes.
Yeah. No, this is a totally normal conversation to have with someone when you're taking things to the next level, so to say, or like it's and like these sort of reassurances that Luke has, I think were kind of perfect. Like, to have that sort of sense of fear and doubt, not just about the trajectory of your relationship, but about your role in the relationship and how you might positively or adversely affect the trajectory of the relationship, is an entirely normal thing. So that, like, because you and Mr. Scarlet have been together for millennia,
Basically, yes.
you have a much different
As he likes to say, he could have gotten a shorter prison sentence. That's an actual line.
Wow. Brilliant and offensive all in one fell swoop.
Oh, he's so great.
He's wonderful. But yeah, no, having recently had a conversation like this is totally normal, where it's just like you have that moment of like, but like, we haven't like stood the test of time of like decades with each other, and like, what if I end up changing, and like, what if I'm not the person you think I am, and like, all of these sort of fears and doubts are entirely normal. At least that's been my personal experience. And I gotta tell you, I loved Luke's response here. I loved Luke's response of like, then I'll just love whoever you turn out to be, when she talks about how she's like, what if she changes? I thought it was such a sweet, amazing notion, because it just shows that he loves her hard stop. Like, I loved it too.
I felt warm and fuzzy at the end of it. I was good.
Yeah.
I loved the conversation. I loved everything he was saying. And I think what they did through the whole episode was plant these seeds of doubt. But they're really only seeds of doubt in June's mind. It's not really, like, I feel like the same questioning that you had, Scarlett, is what I had of that conversation, just in terms of like, what exactly went down in their first marriage. Like, we haven't really seen all that much. Like, what do we know exactly? And wait, was Luke like this crazy, like, baby crazed guy who just moved on to a new person? But then I'm like, well, we haven't really seen that yet. And we know that June has had interactions with Annie. And so we don't know what exactly she said. I mean, we have saw that one interaction, but I imagine there was more is what it was alluded to. So I think it's more of just, it doesn't really matter what the situation was, because by the end of the episode, we're going to see, we get the answer that June was wondering in this flashback. But this was just, I think, to show that she did have those doubts. And that is what's playing in her mind as this reunion gets closer and closer to shore.
Yeah. And you know what? I respect that we haven't seen a lot of Luke and Annie's relationship, and that I don't think we're going to, because the implication there is that every relationship that someone has is going to be inherently different. And judging Luke's relationship with June based off of what happened with his relationship with Annie does him a serious disservice. Just like basing June's relationship with Nick based off of her relationship with Luke does her a disservice, because your interactions with your partner is going to be completely different based off of that partner. So I love that they don't really show us much about Luke and Annie, and I love that like they kind of confirm. I feel like they're never going to show us that, because like with Luke saying like I'm a different person than I was back then is their way of just saying like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like from a creative
Well,
standpoint.
that line I think specifically was kind of alarming, just because that's her question is, what if I become a different person? And he said, well, I'll love the person you are. But it's kind of contradictory to, well, I was a different person in that relationship than I am now, so I changed. And she's like, well, are you going to change? And what if I change? And I think that line, all that jumped out at me was that kind of spiraled her further into her doubt. But I think you're right that we're not going to see it, or that we shouldn't. It doesn't really matter. But it's also that this is the Handmaid's Tale, and there's always going to be two sides to that relationship. Annie's always going to have her view, and Luke's always going to have his. And at the end of the day, in the Handmaid's Tale, we're getting June's perspective of all of it. And this is her just trying to sort out all this information. She's got her best friend who's raising red flags. She's already had interactions with Luke's ex, and now she's about to make this huge life change. And she's just wondering if this is something, if there's more to it, and just normal doubt of about to get married. And I just think it was a really nice flashback to show in this scene, because by the end, all these years later, however many years they had been married at this point, we see that it's true. That sweet moment on the steps was true, and he wants to love the person that she's become regardless, and child or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Love Luke. So,
Yeah.
we can continue being effusive about Luke and this scene. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, till the cows come home. But I think it's a good time to flash back to the boat.